When you hear the name Knights Templar, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's this image of incredible power, of mystery, of wealth. This legendary order of warrior monks who basically ran the medieval world. And honestly, that image isn't too far from the truth.
I mean, at their peak, the Templars were a massive international organization. They were this military, spiritual, and financial juggernaut. Their influence stretched all the way from the Middle East to the farthest corners of Christendom.
But at their very core, they were a holy order. These were knights who took vows, dedicating their entire lives to a sacred cause, protecting Christian pilgrims and defending the newly captured Holy Land.
And yeah, they were rich, unbelievably rich. The order had this huge network of estates, farms, churches, even mines, and fleets of ships. They built a financial system so advanced it was like nothing anyone had ever seen before.
So, that's the big question, right? How in the world did they get there? The legend of their power makes their origin story even more wild. To really get the Templars, you have to forget the Empire for a minute and go all the way back to the beginning, a time when they had pretty much nothing.
All right, so our story really kicks off right after the First Crusade wraps up in 1099. Jerusalem is now in Christian hands, which is a huge deal across Europe. But this victory, it created a brand new and very deadly problem.
Now check out this quote. It was written before the First Crusade even happened, and it shows that people were already desperate to visit Jerusalem. So you can imagine what happened after its capture. That desire just exploded. Suddenly you have waves of pilgrims, nobles, commoners, men, women, all flooding into the Holy Land. And this created a massive security crisis.
The journey was just unbelievably dangerous. The areas around Jerusalem were basically a chaotic frontier zone. These pilgrims had no idea where they were going, and they were just easy pickings for bandits and raiders. There was really no one there to protect them.
And this is where our story really gets going. Because in the middle of all this chaos, a small, pretty unassuming group of knights decides to actually do something about it.
And here you have it, the birth of the Templars. A knight named Hugh of Payns got a few buddies together, and their mission was super simple, not glamorous at all. They were just going to be an armed security detail for these vulnerable pilgrims. That's it. For years, they just did their job quietly. They didn't grow, they didn't get a lot of attention. They were so informal that their name Templars was probably just a nickname people gave them because of where they were staying, on the Temple Mount.
Now, this little operation could have just faded away into history, but in 1127, something happens that changes the game completely. The Templars' leader, Hugh of Payns, gets sent on a mission back to Europe. And this trip shows exactly how they went from nobodies to superstars. It wasn't just diplomacy, it was a masterclass in marketing. Hugh manages to win over one of the most powerful men in Europe, Bernard of Clairvaux, who basically becomes their biggest cheerleader. Their mission, defending Jerusalem, totally resonated with noble families. And by 1129, boom, they get official recognition from the Pope himself.
The success was just immediate and explosive. It was like a floodgate opened. All of a sudden, this tiny band of knights is just swamped with support. Families, inspired by the cause, started donating land, cash, and, critically, they started sending their own sons to join up.
But look, getting a bunch of donations is one thing. Turning that support into a sustainable international organization, that's something else entirely. And this is where the Templars were absolutely brilliant.
Here's their genius move. When they got a donation of land or an estate somewhere in Europe, they didn't just sell it off. Nope, they held onto it and turned it into a local outpost, what they called a commandery. This let them build real, long-term relationships with local families, constantly reminding them of the good work they were doing. It secured support for generations, all while funneling that wealth and those resources right back to the front lines in the Holy Land.
So just look at this transformation. It's staggering. In a little over 50 years, they go from a handful of knights basically living on charity to a massive international order controlling a global network of property. Their mission blows up from just escorting pilgrims to the full-scale military defense of the Crusader states.
Their entire, unbelievable enterprise, from the castles to the armies to the banks, it was all built on one single thing: the public's absolute belief in their holy mission. Thousands of people sincerely believed these were the pious defenders of Jerusalem. Which of course leaves us with one last really crucial question. What happens to an institution that powerful when that public image comes under attack?